Hey, everybody. I'm so happy to be here. Are you happy to be here? Okay. So, this event is about using the blockchain for impact. Now, you guys all know what impact is, of course. How many of you know what the blockchain is? Okay. How many of you have some investment experience in cryptocurrency of any kind? Okay. How many of you think that cryptocurrency is for swindlers and drug dealers and child slavery rings? It's okay, you can say. Okay. Ryan Terabellini, did you just raise your hand? Oh, I see. Okay. Well, that's what I used to think as well. And I started my career a long time ago, and I have always worked in finance. I started working kind of on women's issues, then I started working on macro issues, and then I came to this kind of realization that, and it was, for me, it was kind of an epiphany, that the way to get an engine of growth going, a private sector-led engine of growth, was to make sure, or to try to facilitate the idea that household savings could do more than just sit in a bank account and earn interest that was less than the rate of inflation. This is why banking is such great business all over the world, right? Because what you do is you take deposits, you don't pay any money on those deposits, and you use those deposits, you buy government bonds, so they say it's like the two, how does it go? The 2, 4, and 6 rule. You pay 2% on the deposits, you earn 6% by buying government paper, and you hit the golf course at 4 p.m. That's the rule. And so I always thought, how can we use capital markets so that these household savings can be invested more productively through the use of capital markets in private sector companies? And what happens if you do that properly? These private sector companies then hire more people, they can pay them more, they can grow, and what does this do? This increases household savings. And this is how you get kind of a virtuous circle of growth going. So this was always kind of the idea, my guiding philosophy. And then I was working on policy issues at the Milken Institute in Washington, D.C., and I came across this Bitcoin paper, and I was asked to give a talk on Bitcoin, and so I decided I really needed to figure out what it was about. And the more I learned about it, and the more I learned about the blockchain technology more fundamentally, the more I realized this could be part of the solution for the things that I have always cared about: financial inclusion and access to capital. And I thought it was going to be something potentially revolutionary. Now, Bitcoin has a number of, that particular blockchain has a number of good things and not so good things about it, but it wasn't quite fit for purpose for what I thought I was trying to do. And then I came across Algorand, the blockchain Algorand, and Algorand was founded by a guy named Sylvia Macaulay. He's a MIT professor, Turing Award winner in cryptography. He did not have the idea to attach money to these cryptographic ideas, but he invented a couple of things that the ecosystem of blockchain uses more widely. Kind of everybody uses them. One is something called zero-knowledge proofs, and the other is called verifiable random functions. So now what you need to do is you need to get out your notebooks, and I'm going to explain to you in detail how these cryptographic primitives work. No, I am not going to do that, not least because I don't understand how they work myself. But so he, was kind of watching this blockchain ecosystem evolve over the years, and I think he thought to himself, I could probably build a pretty good one of those. And so what does a good blockchain need? And I think that comes back to, what is a blockchain at all? What are the characteristics of a blockchain? What does it enable you to do? And therefore, what does it need to look like? So a blockchain is a database. And it is a database, though, that is not owned by one entity. And as a result, if one entity gets hacked, the database can still live on the other kind of computers that hold it up. You got to think of it like a dining room table. except that you, as the people sitting around the dining room table, are also helping to hold up the dining room table. And if one of you gets up to go to the bathroom, everybody else can still hold up this dining room table. That's the principle. So it's this database that is shared. The caring and feeding and maintenance and upkeep of this database is shared by everybody that uses it. Everybody has access to that data at the same time, and everybody can kind of see, and they can't mess with the data. So you can put the mashed potatoes on the table, but if you take the mashed potatoes away, you can't do that. You know, everybody else will notice, they'll be like, no, 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 you can't take those mashed potatoes away, those mashed potatoes belong on the table. So this is the idea of having this kind of public blockchain that everybody upkeeps, and as a result, everybody knows about. Now, these are very important characteristics, though, for certain things that we care about in financial inclusion and in access to capital. So if everybody can kind of see this database, what do I usually start with when I talk about this in the United States? I say, well, the first thing this enables you to do is direct payments. Now, I am not going to give you my direct payments lecture here, because that lecture always ends with, take a look at India. Try to figure out what India is doing, because they are on the bleeding edge of direct payments. So you guys already know the importance of direct payments and the challenges that need to be overcome. But for countries that aren't so forward-thinking on direct payments, a blockchain can be a very good solution for that, a very good a part of that ecosystem. It can be very good for here in India as well. The second thing is this idea that you can understand where money or transactions come from, and you can understand where they're going. So I see we've got some people, we're going to be talking a lot about this in our 2 days, but we've got Whole Chain here, for example, that is doing this kind of supply chain tracing. That's another thing that you can do on a blockchain. You can also make money that is a little bit programmable. So you can say, I'll make this payment if something else happens, and I won't make it if that doesn't happen. So when you think about these things, this idea of making very small payments, being able to make them directly, being able to program them so that they don't fire off unless something has happened, the idea that you can trace where things come from and trace where they go to, these are all properties of the blockchain. And when you think about whether you have a good blockchain application or not, it is good for you to always be thinking about these kinds of problems and whether a blockchain solution might not be a good. So I want you to kind of have this framework a little bit in your head as we go through these 2 days together. And so why is Algorand a good blockchain for these purposes? Well, it has a very light carbon footprint. It has very small sub-penny transaction fees. It is very fast. It can do 10,000 transactions per second. So it has a very high throughput. It is very stable. It's never gone down in the 3+ years that it's been around. And when you make a transaction, it's final. So you don't have, as you do in some other instances, this idea of kind of always wondering for the next hour or so whether your transaction is final. So we think that it's a natural fit, the technology of our blockchain, the kinds of problems that a blockchain is naturally suited for, and impact. So those are the 3 legs of the stool. But how many legs does a good stool have? It has 4. So where are we going to double down and think about it for our 4th leg? India. And why are we so focused on India? We have a team on the ground. We've got senior people leading our efforts here. Because India is going to be was the fastest developed country growth, last year, G20 country growth last year. And we think it's going to be one of the fastest growing countries for the next 10 years, as you already know. And so we want to be part of that. So that's number 1. Number 2, India has a very keen technological, educational focus. So we understand that there are a lot of good technologists in India. They are familiar with many different kinds of technology, and so Web3 technology is just a natural evolution. And number 3, the government has been so forward-thinking about some of these core issues that we care about. For example, identity and direct payments and faster payments. So the government already has the right kind of mindset to get out in front on these bleeding edge issues that are so critical to financial inclusion and access to capital. So that's why we're here. So India is the fourth and very important leg of our stool as we think about these things. And we are very lucky to be doing our very first Global Impact Summit here. And we are very lucky to be led by our head of India strategy, a guy named Anil Kakani, and he's going to come up next. I have known Anil for almost 30 years. I was a very small child when we met. We met in kindergarten. And Anil and I, for over these 30 years, we have talked about two things. The two things that we have talked about are impact and how can we personally and professionally have an impact on the world. And the second thing we have talked about is, of course, where can we get good Indian food, no matter what city we happen to find ourselves in. So, checking both of those boxes for the next couple of days, I welcome you to this summit, and with no further ado, Anil Kakani.